In Luke 24, on the road to Emmaus, some friends encounter Jesus, and as he speaks, they find their hearts burning within them. In this On the Road series, we hear from friends about their current walk with Jesus and what he's speaking to them about now that's burning within their hearts. Join us on the journey.
Right, so welcome to another episode of On the Road. I've got Michael and Rhiana with me now, which I'm really excited about. We got to spend years together doing church, and it was wonderful. These are an incredible couple. Rhiana served faithfully in the worship team. They were involved in a whole heap of different things involved in the church life, serving the people that were there, even just folks that would be overlooked. I said this earlier to Rhiana and Michael, but like Rhiana carried an incredible thing for the Father Heart of God. Michael was, Michael, I'll tell you a funny story. The first time I met you was at a football match where you arrived late and then someone tackled you badly and you got a huff and you walked off. And that was the first time that I ever basically met you. It was amazing. And I was like, who would that never...
He's getting more sanctified. But
the worst thing about that story is it would give you the total wrong impression of Michael. I don't give you the total honestly, like this...
He has a strong, like, justice. Let's go somewhere.
It probably wasn't that. It was probably...
someone else.
We'd had a massive argument or something. It was the straw that broke the camel's back.
But that's a grossly unfair story to tell. I'd actually just remembered that earlier. But like you can even just see how much joy I've got to spend with these guys again. They are a faithful couple of God, and I know that I know plenty of stories of where they have followed what God's called them to do. Even just they've lived through difficult times because they've held firm to what it is that God's called them to. And so it's genuinely going to be a delight to hear some of your stories tonight. We've not had much time together in the last couple of years, and so I'm looking forward to hearing some of what's been going on with you guys as well. So why don't we start, as we generally always do, what's God speaking to you about just now, kind of what's burning in your heart, kind of what's God revealing about himself to you guys just now?
Okay. So I think for me, if I had to really boil it down, it would probably be a sense of, is Jesus enough? And I think that's been a journey that's been going on for probably about a year. So we left for Mexico about a year ago. So we're back in England now. We did just shy of a year out there. But before Mexico, I was employed by a church and had a role which included regularly preaching and sort of writing training material, and it felt quite public. I suppose to degree small, but levels of influence and everything else. We had a very short break, and then I suppose from then we launched into Mexico, and we were with an amazing charity out there, amazing sort of that non-profit organization where they ran like an orphanage, a ministry school, church, a day school. And I suppose I probably turned up thinking that there would be some form of continuation of external ministry, whatever word you want to put on it. And it wasn't like that at all. It was basically, I remember one of the times it was, so we arrived there for one of our first Sundays, and it was like, oh, Michael, here's your broom, your sweeper, and you just need to go into the toilets. And we're talking about like they kind of resemble more like public toilets where hundreds and hundreds of the kids, staff, visitors use these, and it's just like spraying, scrubbing, it's going. And I was like, what? And then they're kind of this. I just thought, maybe this is like a jokey clean the toilet. And then it was the Monday, and it was do this, and then all of a sudden I found myself really what I was being asked to do was very much. Rhiana said it earlier, and we were talking like I was basically the bin man. So when I was driving around the campus, collecting people's rubbish, filling up the water bottles from the well, taking it to the kitchen, the houses, and I got to this point. I was like, God, this isn't probably what I expected of our time here. And so, do I need to push back and say, hang on a sec, like,
this isn't?
Am I missing something, or actually is this of you? And I'm just to say, actually, no, this is it. This is God, what you're doing. And I very, very clearly felt that he was saying the latter, which was actually, Michael, this is a year for me and you. We ought to be hidden. And it came down to that question I said at the beginning, really, which is he enough for me? And this was really summed up. We had an amazing ministry team from from YWAM come onto the campus. They were there for a few months, met some amazing families, and they ran a men's Bible study I went to one night. And the guy leading it, really lovely guy, he said, right, all close your eyes, and I'm going to ask you a question. So we're all sitting there, eyes closed, and he says, I want you to picture eternity. I want you to think of all your favorite people who could be there, your favorite foods, hobbies, places. Basically, build up the best possible world you could think of in your head that will go on and on and on forever and ever without anything ever going wrong. No sickness, no loss. And then he says, now you're holding that picture in your mind. Is that still sufficient if Jesus wasn't there? Mm. And like I said, it was already quiet because we were just thinking, but then there came like a holy silence over the table, and it was, and for me, I could just really feel God was putting his stomach. And for me, in all honesty, I felt actually it wouldn't be sufficient. There was a real authentic longing for Jesus where I was like, this does count for nothing if he's not there. But it was almost like a reminder, just being put before me, this is the season I'm calling you into. What was actually really funny with that is the guys and girls were in separate Bible studies. Sorry, I nearly took you out. And the girls had no idea the question we were being asked, and they had a massive tray of donuts. And so they turn up, so they're like a donut, and it's like in this split second, this holy moment, everyone's opened their eyes, like, yeah, I'll take one, and it was gone. But I felt that was what God spoke to me at that moment. And that's really been a pattern up until now as well. Mm. So relationally, I would say that's what I'm hearing him speak to me about. And then in terms of the overflow of that relationship, in terms of, again, ministry, whatever, it's I feel like we're probably us together. We're in a pit stop. So Mexico felt like the cars pulled in. We're in Mexico, pit stop time with Jesus, being refueled, him sharpening, a lot of pruning, painful, but so good to be cut back. And then before you come out of the pit stop and you get back on the track, there's the guy there with the sign. I don't know if it's a color or sign, but it indicates that you are to wait until this is around. And the car's got probably freedom. The car's got freedom to go, but it's not wise because there's obviously something going on where the person who knows best is saying it's time to wait. And I just feel like that's where we're at. We could try and build or pioneer or doing something, start something.
But also feeling like you were made for more, right? Like at capacity. I was built to go fast. I was built for this race. I think you're not just a little.
Like it's not a kid's plastic toy car with little pedals or something. Yes. And you're like, this is the best you could go for. Like, God's put stuff in you and you know it's there, and then God's spoken to you about it. I want you just to steal away with me. And you're like, that's great. But it's that tension of being like, but I know I'm made for some of this other stuff. Yeah.
And so I just feel like Jesus has got a sign at the top says wait, and I still feel like the question he still answers, am I enough? Am I enough? And him asking that to particularly me personally, I think, and I'm trying to embrace that because I've heard the stories and seen firsthand people who have run and they have fallen away, they've tripped up, they've just led things into wrong directions. And so many times it's because they're unwilling to embrace the moments where Jesus just wants to be alone with them or correct them or be hidden or to prune. And it's like, I'm going to refuse that and just keep going. And it never ends well. But we've said together, we don't want to be that couple. We want to be running hard, burning bright, loving Jesus, loving people until our dying days. And even if that means another 2, 3, 5 years, if it's just hidden, we'll do it.
I love that. So we'll hear Rhiana's first answer, but the thing that I love about that is it's very easy, and we've all heard it, where someone says, oh, God told me to go and do this thing, and we went, and man, the grace of God was incredible, and this thing happened, and before you know, this church grew to 1,000 people, and this happened, that happened, and you're like, wow. But the truth is, there are loads of those seasons as well, where God says, oh yeah, I'm going to ask you really tough questions here, and I really want you to learn this. I'm going to make you clean bathrooms for a year, and then I'm going to call you back to where you were before, and you're like, oh, great, now this is it, here we go. And I was like, no, that was round 1, this is round 2, and it might be a much shorter season, but like it's like that. There's as much of that way of God speaking to us and saying, this is what I want you to do. And actually that's a harder thing to hear God say.
Yeah.
Is wait, or just, I just want to keep poking this little point here with you as well. So it's like, it's not necessarily comfortable for you, Michael, but I'm delighted that that's where you are, because you can share that with people, because that's like that's a lot of the experience of basically hearing God speak.
It's so good for us. Like when we were in Mexico, I think I was hearing other Christians talking about the similar process they were in. And a scripture that really stood out to me was when the Israelites were in the wilderness and God turns around to them and he's like, I wanted to test you in the wilderness to see what was in your heart, see what really state you were in, to see the everything that you actually depended on. And I led you through that place. And then it says to do you good in the end. I'm like, oh, yeah, it's that, like, this is to do me good in the end and him good in the end. And actually everybody else that will ever come into contact with
will be richer for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's the thing that God cares about your heart more than, like he could, the people that you might feel that you could go and serve or save, or the messages that you feel God could go and get someone else to share that message with them. The Holy Spirit could go and save that person just by revealing himself to them. But what he's most intimately caring about is you guys. Yeah. It's incredible. But it is a tough tension place to live as well.
Yeah. It's funny when you're in a season. I said it before. Like if you buy a red car, all of a sudden you go out onto the road and all you see is just red cars everywhere. And and I think being in the Bible at the moment is the season I'm in. I'm just seeing people who held on to things, and Jesus' heart is like, I need you to let go of that. I'm thinking like the scribe who says, Jesus, I'll follow you anywhere you go. And I don't know, maybe it doesn't say this explicitly, but I wonder if not Jesus picks up on the fact there's something about, I'll follow you, but I want A level would be recognition, comfort. So he says, actually, birds have nests, foxes have dens, the Son of Man has no place to lay his head. The rich young ruler, he says, actually, go away, sell everything you have. And Jesus didn't ask for the money. Jesus didn't say, give the money to me. They give it to the poor. Jesus is not after his money, but he's like, I know that if you follow me and we do not deal with what's there, it will cause problems. Yeah. And I think that's the thing for us. It's just slowly, unless that grain of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it will not bear much fruit. So I think there's just a lot of death.
There's something I like is it's very easy to measure the wrong metrics. Like God's like, I look at the heart and that's what I care about. And it's very easy for us to look at, we had a famous moment where someone said to us, we'd moved somewhere because God had called us to go there, and we'd been there for about 9 months, a year or something, and on the surface it didn't look like there was a whole lot of stuff, but God was doing a huge amount in us, and like our faith, like my wife and our faith was like, man, like we just learned so much by God. And someone said to me once, they said, I was telling a friend about your story because they're about to go and do something similar. I said, oh great, is it because God called them? They're like, well, yeah, a little bit, but I didn't tell them it didn't work out for you guys, but I just told them about you hearing God call. And there's genuinely no malice in it. They were like, oh, it's been a year, like nothing's happened. So obviously I can tell that this maybe wasn't right, but I've tried to encourage them but it's because we just measure surface stuff, or, like the kind of footprint that seems to be happening, and God just cares about your heart.
And this is nothing new. Like this has always been happening with humanity, and we just hate the humility. We hate the low place. There's like our flesh absolutely despises being hidden and low. It does, and it's so upside down.
I'd love to hear what God speaks to you. I mean, apart from obviously spoiling Michael's holy moments with donuts, Rhiana, I know that God will use.
I think for me, it's like, I think the dying thing has been absolutely huge. I always wanted to be a missionary growing up. I always knew like I wanted to give everything to him, but I think when children come along, especially, it just goes to another level. And I think my home, I'm from Guernsey, which is like the most beautiful island in the world. And laying that down, like laying my land down. Leaving, everyone in Guernsey says, like, this is the best place to,
Why would you want to go anywhere else?
bring your children up. Like, why? You're crazy. Why would you go anywhere else? Why would you go to the mission field? Why would you give up luxury and comfort? Why would you give up schooling? Like, there's no schooling for our children. I'm now currently homeschooling in England. Did not expect that at all. Left community, left my family. And I'm like, why? Like, why have I done this? And it's layer after layer that, like, I feel the cost of leaving a life that on paper looks like you've
made it. Yeah. Why would you leave? Yeah.
Yeah. But I noticed whenever I was in that, I felt so deeply unsatisfied. Like, I felt so scared all the time.
Wow.
But whenever I would take risks and pursue Jesus, I just feel like the fear went. Getting on the flight to Mexico, honestly, the level of fear and panic I had to deal with to get on that flight. And I landed and I was like, number one, fear is a liar. Like, wow. And then I was just like, it's just every step you take forward to leave something for him. And so I feel like what he's speaking to me about is like, are you willing to let everything go? Like, and I know that that's going to keep coming. But I believe in what lies on the
side.
I've seen too much to know, like, everything that I have given up in the past, I've always seen God give way more abundance, way more. Like, even a really small little thing, like, we were packing the suitcase to go to Mexico, and my boy, who's 3, absolutely loves cars, and he had hundreds and hundreds of cars, and I'm there crying, packing, because he's only allowed like a little box of cars. And I'm like, what kind of mum am I? Like, why am I doing this to my poor boy? And then we get to Mexico, and basically a family leave to go somewhere else, and they leave us like all their cars, like most incredible ways. And I'm like, I didn't have to buy any of this. Felt so silly, but actually a really big deal. And it's like God even honored the really little sacrifices. How much more will he honor like the things that you give up? And it's like the promise in the Bible, we give up land, mother, father, brothers, children, you will receive 100-fold, not only in this lifetime, but there is the promise that it's in this lifetime we actually get back way more than we gave. And for me, that's so exciting. I can feel the buzz of God. What next then? Like, you feel the cost. Well, what do you think it's going to look like? This is great.
But I love that when you put that with what you're talking about with the heart stuff, because the very easy scenario is for someone to say, oh, Brian, I'm going to give up this thing for God and I'm just going to wait for my 100-fold return of the next thing. But he knows our heart and he knows what's good for us. You know what I mean? Like, and so again, that's where those two things tie together, and that's where the falseness of the prosperity gospel. If I tell you, basically, just you need to give up A, sacrificially, because B is so much better. You're like, well, that's not sacrifice, that's not trust, that's not obedience, that's not try to put my hands wholeheartedly in. God knows he knows the dynamic of what's happening there.
Because actually, once it's dead, it's dead. Like, I really fully die to, yes, I'm a musician, I actually don't see myself as that at all, and I fully died to that thing of like singing or playing the piano or worship leading or whatever, and I went there to go rescue the orphan babies, and then there was no way, shape or form like I wanted kind of music or gift to be used. I got there and they're like, actually, I don't really want you to do this, but hey, we need a singer and a piano player. Can you do this? And that was what my time was there. And because it had died, and because my heart was right. There was like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
There was life.
Yeah, there's like, this actually has no hold on you. And that's the balance that if we can get to, that is powerful.
Yeah. But it's been exciting because our kids have lived this with us. You know, we're healthily transparent with them, but they are like nearly 4 and 6, but they've seen this. You know, our little boy, he's seen that testimony in leaving things behind and things being provided. We've broken out of Jesus is an hour and a half on a Sunday morning or whatever. You know, we've actually said, no, this is a daily thing. And I think in the sacrifices, they're starting to see answers to prayer and just small things being drip fed to them. But you can see for them, Jesus is so much more real and on their radar as someone authentic than maybe potentially what he was becoming in a few years. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that, like healthily transparent. Like there's a wisdom of stuff, like, you know, like, and how you share it, but you want them to be part of the story, because like the first people that God's called you guys to serve are your kids. Like they're like, you know, like there will be no one else that trumps them in terms of the calling that God has put in your life. Like you will have more input in them, and the key thing to teach them is Jesus is here and he's alive and he's providing, and he's with you in all these things at all times. Like and so it's beautiful that you're able to do that. The thing that I'm interested to hear your view on is, because I know just now you're kind of in an in-between place. Like you've come back to the UK, you're trying to just waiting, as you've said, that pit stop thing of discerning from God. And you've again articulated really clearly, like there's that thing of like all the stuff died. We had no expectation. We saw God was better than we'd hoped for, and you like his plans were better, and you know all this stuff died. But then there's always this funny moment for me where you're like, but all this stuff that's gone before is God preparing us for what's coming next. And so I'm just interested, you know, having been through that process, you're kind of now back in that place of waiting, God, what's coming next, knowing that he's prepared you for some stuff, which means if you've had to go through the process of dying to something, then there's more of that to come. And I'm interested how you're like that tension of basically being in that place, how you guys are walking that out, how you're going to, as a couple, discern and hear God for those next steps, and how that kind of works as well. And whatever extent you can talk about that, I'd be interested.
Yeah,
I think we're really good at reminding ourselves of what are the prophetic words over our life. We are really good at that. Don't know whether it's because I'm like a trained life coach, but I'm like,
I said we.
let's get our dream out.
No, we say we. It's not we. Rhiana is much better.
You're great.
I'm growing, but Rhiana is better.
Yeah, very, very good. I really need vision. Like I need to know why I'm doing something.
Yeah.
And so having those prophetic words, keeping in mind, like, why am I giving this thing up again? What has Jesus asked me to do? Remembering the dreams that I've had. You know, I journal down dreams, like specific dreams, not just goal dreams.
Yeah.
And reading my journal again, like when I'm walking somewhere and I felt him speak or it remind me of a scripture, I journal that down, and then I go back and read that and I'm like, oh yeah. Then you start seeing the pattern again, because we just forget so easily. And that's really helpful, because it is easy, I guess, like Peter, when you start looking at the waves, you're like, oh, and then before you know it, you really are sinking. And I've had that moment so many times where I start looking at the cost. I start looking at what my children are missing out on. And then fear starts coming, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm actually So for me, looking at the prophetic words and the scriptures is an absolute lifeline for me to even stay afloat, because I'm afloat and I'm screwed if I don't keep my eyes on him. And I don't remember why I stepped out of the boat in the first place. You know, could have stayed in the boat really easily.
Yeah. And the best thing about that picture of the the walking on the water and drowning is that if we start to feel we're panicking, the temptation is to try and fight our way back up the shore. But like, you can't walk on water. Like, no amount of effort on your part. And I remember, so that particular passage in the Bible was part of the story of God calling us out of where we were. And I remember there was something I read where someone wrote it once, and they're like, why would you want to stay in the boat? Not just because it's adventure and stuff, but Jesus is over there. Like, why would you not want to be walking towards Jesus? Like, again, like, and that's like, like, where else would you want to be apart from trying to get closer to Jesus? Like, but now, I'm interested about you, Michael, because like journaling, like everyone who journals talks about the richness and the blessing of it. I've never been able to make that sort of stuff stick. I can't do it. And so, like, apart from Rhiana reminding you what God's spoken about, how does that work for you?
I think for me, it's always just trying to have very honest conversations with Jesus when I'm on the go. Just I'm walking, I'm thinking, I'm just those times for myself. I don't ever just to try to give him the fluff or the nice things he wants to hear. So I'm not in a way I think some people talk like they shout at God and they're rude, but I will just be honest with him about heart and what's going on. And I think at the moment, again, it just feels like coming back to that thing of like, am I enough? Like, will you pray just to connect with me, not for an answer, for a breakthrough somewhere else? Will you read just to actually
be my word,
to be in my word and to know me more, not because you've got to write a sermon or share something with someone. And that's where I'm at in this process as well. It's just this whole thing of, am I enough? Will you worship simply just to sing and just actually enjoy him? And that's kind of what I just feel with
so you almost go back to doing the basic principles of like prayer, Bible, worship.
Yeah. Like, so for me, the way I often think of trajectory, it's often how I think. I can often look at a culture, a situation, the way a team is put together or direction people are going, and I try and think, I look at what does this look like if this carries on for the next 1, 3, 5, 10 years, a lifetime. And I suppose that's the big thing, the way I think, right, so if I'm in the word for a sermon, or if I'm praying just for a breakthrough, then I was trying to say, what's the trajectory? If that's some of where the heart's at, what does that look like? Well, it can actually look like a very busy performance-y, or someone who actually almost has a lack of intimacy for the sake of external doing. And so for me, I want to pull this thing. It's funny. So even just an example, at the moment, I'm one of the things we've asked each other is, why are we here in this season? You know, why aren't just kind of here in South London at the moment? I'm out doing like landscaping, decking, fencing, stuff like that. And one of the reminders even for that is able to say, right, let's stop. Why we're here? We are earning money in this short season because we're doing a month out in Romania working with the Romani gypsy children. And that's to just dip our toe in to see if there's something there. So that's Rhianna's side there. It's the why are we doing this? Why am I home with the kids quite a lot? Why are you out working? And we're able to go back to that because in a few weeks' time, we need the finance to be out there for a month. I think that's. And then for me, this whole thing of trajectory, even putting a fence up today, we were getting the string line level so the fence runs. And it's really easy to think, it's just kicked out a couple of millimeters.
It'll be fine.
It'll be fine for that post. If that now becomes your new trajectory, in 50 meters time, that fence line is several foot out and you've eaten into someone else's garden and it looks an absolute mess. And I think so that trajectory for me is where I'm at the moment. I just want to keep going back to the very, very basic. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love, like that's it kind of thing. Seek his kingdom, just love people, make disciples. And every time I'm just straighten up. So that when it's like the sign turns from the pit stop and the car goes, it's in the right space.
Your alignment is in place.
You're in the right lane. So that's what it is. I suppose. That's what it is probably for me at the moment.
So I get that I might be about to ask you just to repeat the stuff you've said already, but I'm just like kind of as a last point, I'm interested because obviously you guys were involved in church leadership, the kind of the UK church scene. And as you said, Juan, you know, like some degree of platform and influence, and Rhiana, you're doing worship stuff and things like that as well. God takes you into the pit stop in a very different culture and world to what the UK is going on, or kind of the Western church, if I maybe would kind of talk about it in that sense. And so I'm interested of you guys coming back now of just even that sort of trajectory stuff. Like, I don't want to be disparaging of the church or anything like that as well, but I'm just interested on your perspective, having been through this journey, of like what you would say to Christians just now in the UK, or people who are listeners who are kind of in that same place where you were. And again, this is not like, oh, you're so much higher up the mountain than them, or what would you but I'm just intrigued, like kind of what your thing is that you felt that you would say to a church leader, a Christian, or someone that's, you know, just had another year of the same sort of thing.
Yeah.
Good question.
What were some of the questions after the foundation thing, the rock, the foundation, the building, that you got me to ask people? When I preached recently, and you gave me some of the coaching questions to ask on the back of it, can you remember what they were? They're really
no, but I guess what comes to my mind is like is question like, why are you doing what you're doing? Like, is there? It's so easy just to keep doing what you've always done. Like, you're on the hamster wheel and you're just going and going and going. And in church, you see that all the time. And I think lockdown was a blessing where people started to ask the question,
like, what's this for? Why are we doing this?
It's just gone back to the same, you know, and that's scary. And man, there was an opportunity there. We need to keep asking ourselves the question, why am I doing what I'm doing? Is that what the prophecies over my life? Is there something God has been asked me to do it and I've been disobedient in it? And then take a risk, be brave, and go for that thing.
Yeah.
Like, why not? It's something so healthy about getting out of your comfort place. It looks like moving town in England. Like, I'm not saying everyone has to do it internationally, but just doing something where it means you have to make yourself uncomfortable and you have to depend again on him. I think we've just got so comfortable and so, you just can, you know what's going to happen. You can expect, and then God's like, oh, I really wanted to show off. I really wanted to, and we miss out because of our choices. So I'd say go for it.
So, I think probably similar for me. I think one of the passages I read recently was in it was Luke's recording of it, where Jesus speaks about the man who built his house on the rock. And for this, one of the big things when he spoke to me about in Mexico, and has since, about you build on the rock, and then there's the foundations. The foundations dictate the house. So depending on what foundations are in, even if you think of an actual house, if it's small foundations, you can only build single story.
Right, yeah.
If there's cracks in the foundations, there's going to be movement in the house. It's all sorts. So I think for me, I'm in a place where I would say, just stop for a moment and don't look at what money's in the account or whatever. The foundational questions: what things would I not give up for Jesus? And then why would I not give that up for you, Lord? What is that? What's that doing for me? And actually, what am I actually getting from that? What would it look like if I was to really give that up? And then again, just think of the trajectory. It's one of the reasons we went to Mexico, is because we stopped, we stepped back, we looked at our dream boards. Sounds very dream board. No, it sounds, so for us, it's a real sense of like being like reverently before God. Like, as we've delighted ourselves in you, what desires have you put in our heart? Like, what things have you actually marked us to live with, kind of thing, and had those laid out. So when I say dream board, it's that, not like, just sitting.
I see sparkles and pink ribbons on your dream board, Michael. You can't, no matter, nothing you see now Couldn't stop me visiting your team.
And for us to step into that was brutal. That was selling pretty much everything we had, other than about 4 or 5 suitcases. Because it was that trajectory thing again. If we carry on the trajectory we're on, so whether or not you're an individual, you lead a small group, or a church, whatever it is. It was our good friend Actor, who I think it was a Brazilian pastor who shared with him. If you always do what you've always done, you always get what you've always got. And I just think you've got to ask the brutal question. And sometimes people plowing hundreds of thousands of pounds into things, hours and hours and hours of energy. And when you actually look at the fruit, the heart of it, it's painful. It's incredibly painful to do it, because you have to be really honest with your crowd. Yeah. And you have to be really honest with.
No, you can say that. So you can say crap, Rhiana. That's okay.
It's not all time ones.
And you have to be honest with your ugly and the mess. And I just think God said to me one time, he said, if you want to see the glory of God, you have to dive into the mess of man. And I think God is so unafraid of mess, and he's actually lives there. I think that's why he lives with the poor and the broken and the needy. Because there's just no pretense. He's like, oh, finally. It's not, I don't have Pharisees. Finally. Yeah, exactly. I can do something with you. And my heart would be for us Christians just to really grow in that.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you, guys. I'm just going to pray for you really quickly. Lord God, I thank you for the time with them. Lord God, it has really been good. Lord God, I'm delighted that you've taken them through this pit stop. I'm delighted even just that they're still sitting at that waiting sign just before you release them, Lord God, because it means we get to capture just now a little bit of the place where Christians live. Like I remember the imagery of, like, you get Good Friday, where basically Jesus is killed. Sunday is brilliant, Jesus comes back to life. But Saturday, like, is a really tough place to live. And actually a lot of the Christian experience is lived on that Saturday, where God's told you to do something, or there's something happening and you've not got to Sunday yet, and there's a peak regism, but you've not got to Easter Sunday, you've not seen the fullness of what God is doing, and you're living in Easter Saturday. And so, Father God, Lord, I pray that it would be a swift season for them. They would be ready to move on to the next thing, Lord God. I pray just for a real blessing over them and their children as they pack and they leave things behind, and as they go away for this month, just to see what you've prepared for them. But Father God, Lord, I just ask that you would just, even Holy Spirit, by your grace, you would take something off the lessons that they've learned and you would just bury them deep into our hearts. Father God, that those of us that are listening to this will get to piggyback on the journey they've had with you. Lord God, we would get some of the tough yards that they've walked in our spirits to really grasp the truth of what it is, that you are enough for us, Father God. You are enough. And Lord God, would you just, through their testimony they've shared with us now, Lord, would you help us that are listening or spending time with these guys just now, just loosen our grips and just fully let go of the stuff that we've clung to and falsely seeing it as a Messiah. Falsely seeing it as a Messiah, Lord God. I just even, Lord, the Israelites in the wilderness, they say, oh shit, back in Egypt, we ate like kings, didn't we? It was brilliant back there, Lord God. And I even just get a sense there'll be Christians just now listening to this that have been trying to almost convince themselves, oh no, it was better back when I wasn't walking on water or kind of pursuing after God. It was better back. And Lord God, it's a lie. The best thing always, Lord God, is to be walking towards you where you've called us to go, doing exactly what you've called us to do. And so, Lord God, I just ask you would bless these guys as they keep doing that, and bless us as we take some of their story to heart. Amen. Thank you so much for your time, guys, and join us for the next time we're on the road. God bless.
Yeah, thank you.